2019 must be the year of the comeback album. It seems like every time I turn around, there's another band that's releasing their first album in like 8 years or more. I mean, so far this year we've had new albums from Pedro the Lion and The Damn Things and Rammstein, and perhaps the band that waited the longest to put out a comeback album, Possessed, the OG death metal band who waited 30 years to put out their comeback album this year. And this is all great. These are wonderful things, and for the most part, these albums don't really suck, which is a good thing for the fans of these bands. But perhaps the most important, or the one that's going to mean the most for the fans with the comeback album, is the one that we're talking about today, which is Scream Through the Walls by As Cities Burn. Not only is this As Cities Burn's first album in 10 years, it's the first one since their debut in 2005 to have original vocalist TJ Bonnet on it. When you're talking about fans of As Cities Burn, they generally fit into two categories: those who like their second and third album and those who don't. And the main difference between the first album and those other two, like I said, is the vocalist TJ. And he provided the harsh vocals on their debut album, Son, I Loved You at Your Darkest. When he left, his brother Cody took over lead vocal duties, and with that, harsh vocals almost completely disappeared. And almost from the moment that the second album came out, there have been groups of fans of this band that have been crossing their fingers and just hoping and praying one day for the return of TJ on vocals and getting a quote-unquote proper follow-up to Son, I Loved You at Your Darkest. Well, I am happy to announce that with this album, Scream Through the Walls, those fans are finally getting their follow-up with TJ on vocals. One of the reasons why Son, I Loved You at Your Darkest is held in such high regard among fans is it's one of those albums from the mid-2000s that was released as part of Christian heavy music's meteoric rise into the mainstream. This is 1 year after their Only Chasing Safety by Under Oath. In the same year, you had albums like Norma Jean's Oh God, The Aftermath, Emery's The Question. You had Haste the Days, When Everything Falls. You had Maylene and the Sons of Disaster's first album. And all of these were just really key and important albums to the explosion of this genre. And it's because of these albums in particular that the future successes of albums like Under Oath Defined a Great Line, Norma Jean's Redeemer, the overall meteoric rise of The Devil Wears Prada. 2005 was definitely a key part of the uphill side of that line graph if you were to plot it out. And a lot of these albums, like the ones that I named, still hold up today, and the people who are fans of this music, myself included, still hold some of these albums up as some of the best from their teenage years. And Son, I Loved You at Your Darkest is almost always counted among them. But this isn't an episode of Sean's Favorites, this is a new album review, so let's start talking about Scream Through the Walls. Now, I will tell you, even though TJ is back on vocals on this album, don't go into this expecting As Cities Burn to pretend that albums like Come Now Sleep and Hell or High Water didn't happen. This is definitely a progression album. This isn't going all straight back to the Son, I Loved You at Your Darkest formula. What you're basically getting is a combination of the first album and the second and third album all kind of mashed up together. Yes, you have the harsh vocals back with TJ, but he and his brother Cody are sharing vocal duties almost half and half. So instead of Son, I Loved You at Your Darkest, where it was mostly harsh vocals and Cody only popped up here and there, you get the harsh vocals and the clean vocals trading off each other, with sometimes the clean vocals carrying a chorus with the harsh vocals offering flavor in the back or color in the back, and vice versa on other things. There's entire verses that are screamed, there's entire verses that are sung. They pretty well mix the elements of the earlier and the later era As Cities Burn together, and it's great to see these two brothers working together once again. The album also marks a return to a heavier sound like Son, I Loved You at Your Darkest, but like I said before, before, once again, this is more of a combination of style. The lighter, more alternative rock of the later era albums offer just as much inspiration as the heavier post-hardcore of their first album. Now, another part of that, taking influence from the later albums, that might be a bit of a deal breaker for some hardcore fans is the mathy elements from Son, I Loved You at Your Darkest, and even some of it that bled over into Coming Out of Sleep really isn't there. You'll get some hints of it here and there, but they're not as head trippy as they were 14 years ago. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. What you have here is a maturity in the songwriting. They're taking the lessons that they learned over those years and they're applying, you know, like strong song structures and catchiness, but still carrying some of that excellent musicianship that they learned whenever they were playing more mathy riffs and bringing it into it. This is not dumbed down songwriting. This is more deliberate and mature songwriting. But despite all these changes, this entire evolution of going 14 years without their original vocalist and 10 years between their last album and this one, this album is not unrecognizable. This is still very distinctly an As Cities Burn album. It's still a very mid-tempo, post-hardcore type of album with a couple, you know, faster songs towards the middle end of the album, specifically songs Chains and Bright White Lights, which are both really good songs. I like them very much. The band has managed to, over the years, still maintain their identity, even through the changes and all the differences from album to album that they have. Overall, I give this album a 3.5 out of 5. I'm not going to pretend that a lot of the appeal of this album doesn't come from the fact that it's a comeback album for a highly influential post-hardcore band from the mid-2000s, and it's a reunion of sorts with their original vocalist, and they're returning a bit to the sound of their first album before their sound went through a major change up. You know, I'm not going to deny that that's going to be the primary reason why a lot of people are going to be listening to this album. However, it is still not a bad album. As far as post-hardcore goes, it's pretty strong, pretty competent. It's not going to be earth-shattering or anything, and it still maintains the identity of As Cities Burn. It's like I said before, this is without a doubt an As Cities Burn album, and coming back after so long and managing to do that and still put out a competent album is pretty impressive in my book. Once again, this week I'm going to give you some suggestions of some other albums that came out that I think you all might enjoy, depending on what you're into. Starting off, I'm going to suggest the new album from Dinosaur Pileup called Celebrity Mansions. This group is an English rock band, kind of a hard rock, fuzz rock kind of group, but not a band that really takes itself too seriously, kind of silly. Not really full-on nerd rock, but I would liken them more to like a Maladroit era Weezer or something similar to like the White Album. If you like that kind of stuff, you'll probably be into this. For the metalheads, I have Realms of Time by Diviner. This is more of a traditional metal album, kind of new wave of British heavy metal, or kind of thrashy, not quite thrash. Very soaring, clean vocals, similar to like a Ronnie James Dio. But all around just a very well composed, very well produced, very well put together album with some pretty crushing riffs. It's pretty good. And finally, a bit of left field, I have Paradise by the Matson 2. This is a jazzy pop group that is comprised of two twin brothers. Something a little different. They sound almost a little more like a jazz trio, with the electric guitar, bass, and drums and everything, because of overdubbing and everything. But it's just an interesting, rather just a pleasant listen. If you're into some of like the earlier chill wave stuff, like the early Turo et Moi, this is going to be right up your alley. I like this one a lot too. But that's going to do it for this edition of Continuous Thunder, and now I'd like to know your thoughts. Did you listen to this album? Did you like it? Did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? Go ahead and leave those thoughts down in the comments, and tell me your favorite As Cities Burn album. I know all three of them are very different and people have very strong opinions about that. So let me know your favorite one down there. And also let me know if you like the suggestions, if you want me to keep doing that. Quick reminder that you can follow the channel on Instagram and Twitter. The handles will be on the screen and there'll be links in the description. There will be links to all of my suggested albums as well down there. I forgot to mention that last time and I almost forgot to mention it this time, but yeah, there'll be links down there as well as a link to the As Cities Burn album too. I don't know how many people actually look down there, but I do put links to all the albums, most of the albums that I mention in these videos down there. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.